Lion in the Wind, Chapter 27. As the last light of day began to fade on the horizon, the lions continued to push themselves to their limits as they ran with all their might. "Where are we going first?" asked Rank. "To the train yards. We need to head south as quickly as we can." "But why there?" "The trains will be the fastest way to get there," replied Chigani. "Heads up." "Truck coming," shouted one of the lions. "Scatter." "Everyone hide," shouted Chigani. The lions quickly spread out and took cover as an old army truck rumbled down the road towards them. Chigani switched his eyes to night vision mode and studied the cab of the truck. To his surprise, something resembling a small child could be seen in the passenger's seat. But there was no sign of a driver. Suddenly Chigani realized who it was. "Brakeman," he said in surprise. He bolted out into the road and stopped along the shoulder as the truck came to a halt in front of him. A moment later, Brakeman jumped down and trotted over to Chigani. He put his hands on his hips and grinned slyly. "Wow, fancy meeting you here," he quipped. "Where are you going?" asked Chigani. "To find you, which I didn't expect to do quite this quickly. Can you take us to the train yards?" "Sure, hop in," said Brakeman. Chigani nodded to the other lions nearby who soon appeared from the shadows and then leapt into the bed of the truck. He soon joined them. As the truck began pulling away, Chigani poked his head through the back of the cab and looked at Brakeman. "Why do you have this truck?" "It belongs to Mr. Black," he said. "I stole it in order to get out of the facility. Nearly got myself smelted down several times while I was in there. So I didn't feel like taking any more chances." That makes sense." Brakeman nodded in agreement. "So why are you in such a hurry to get to the train yard?" "I need to reach Major Delgra and warn him about Black's plans." "Why bother? We can just drive you to wherever you have to go." Chigani shook his head. "This truck belongs to Feral Black. He will be looking for it. That will make it easy for him to find me." Brakeman thought about this for a moment. Good point. "All right, train yards it is." Chigani nodded. He then turned to Ithaca, and said, "Go take the others and find Pen. Tell him to gather our brethren and head north into the mountains and hide until I return." "We can't leave you unprotected," said Ithaca. "What's important right now is stealth, and there are too many of us to move with any proper degree of it. But someone has to come with you. I will have Rank remain with me. Now go." "Time is precious," said Chigani. The other lions hesitated briefly, but soon obeyed. Brakeman felt the truck lurch slightly as the lions leapt out into the night. "What was that?" he asked. "I sent the others to go find Pen. I have things for him to do." Brakeman frowned. "You know he's not going to like this. Pen's ability to lead is equal or superior to my own. So now is a good time for him to learn how to be the leader he was meant to be." Brakeman rolled his eyes, but said nothing. 30 minutes later, the truck rumbled to a stop in a sprawling transit train yard. Everyone, save for the 3 droids that had been driving, slipped out of the truck and took cover in the bushes nearby. "Take the truck somewhere far away from here and ditch it. Then catch up to us when you get a chance," said Brakeman. The droids acknowledged and were soon on their way. Brakeman then turned and joined his 2 brothers near the tracks. Once there, they waited patiently as several trains came and went. But none were what Chigani was looking for. Eventually, though, he spotted just the one he was after. "That's our ride. Follow me," he whispered. All of the droids, including Brakeman and his remaining spiders, slipped out of the bushes and into a nearby cargo car through a partially open door as it passed by. The train soon sped away into the night. Several hours later it passed by a sleepy little town in the middle of nowhere. As it slowed to wait for another train to pass, Chigani and the others leapt out and quickly made their way into town. "Hey, I remember this place," said Rank. "You were born here," said Chigani. "Wait, this is..." Chigani nodded. "What are we doing here?" whispered Rank. "Getting help from an old friend." Brakeman rolled his eyes. Oh, brilliant move, brother. What are you trying to do? Get us melted down, he muttered. We'll be fine. Now follow me, said Chigani. The small group moved quickly through the town and into the prairie beyond. It wasn't long before they reached the security fence around the labs and began studying it with care. Chigani grinned and pointed at several sensors near the fence. I see the Major has improved his security, he said. Brakeman looked around in curiosity and then saw something that almost made his circuits arc in fright. Chigani? I think he improved it a little more than you think, he said, pointing at two men who appeared seemingly out of nowhere. Stay where you are and don't move. We don't want to shoot you, said one of them. The lions turned their heads in surprise and spotted the men. One of them pointed a flashlight at the three droids and then chuckled. Well, isn't this a pleasant surprise, he said. He then motioned for the other guard to lower his rifle. Why are you three trying to sneak into the facility? Asked the first man. We came to see Major Delgra, said Chigani. You should have just come in the front door. Thank you, but we'd like to avoid being seen by anyone who might recognize us, said Chigani. The man nodded. Something top secret, eh? Okay, follow us. We'll let you in a side gate. The guards escorted the lions over to a small unlit gate nearby and opened it for them. They watched curiously as the lions slipped through, followed by Brakeman, and then a small cadre of spider droids. Despite working where they did, that was a sight they weren't used to seeing. The small group then made their way across the facility and to Delgra's office. So how do we get in? Asked Brakeman quietly. We knock, said Chigani. Do what? Said Brakeman in surprise. Chigani leaned up against the building and gently began tapping on the window. At first Delgra ignored this, but then finally grew annoyed at the sound and turned to see what it was. To his surprise he spotted a paw gently tapping on the window. He quickly rushed over and opened it. Who's there? He asked. It's me, came a whispered reply. Chigani? What the heck are you? Wait, no. Come around the back. I'll let you in. He closed his window and hurried across the building to the back door and opened it. Two large lions, a small assistance droid, and nearly a dozen spider droids slipped through the door and trotted inside. Delgra immediately closed and locked the door behind them. Follow me, he whispered. He quickly led them across the building into his office. Once everyone was inside he closed the door, subtly tapped his pager, and then stepped behind his desk. What are you doing here? He asked. I have come seeking your assistance, said Chigani. In what way? We need your help defeating Feral Black. Delgra's eyes narrowed as he turned and sat down behind his desk. What's he done this time? He asked suspiciously. It's not what he's done, but rather what he plans to do, said Chigani. He pulled a small data card out of his chest and handed it to Delgra. Everything you need to know is on here. Delgra took the small card, plugged it into his computer, and began to read all of the data. As he read the transcript of Chigani's conversation with Black, his eyes went wide. Just then Odivian walked into the office and stopped in surprise when he saw Brakeman and the two lions. He soon noticed Delgra's startled expression. He hurried around the desk and peered at what he was reading. His expression soon changed to one of surprise as well. Finally the two men looked at each other and said almost simultaneously, "We were right." This piqued the interest of all three droids. You were right about what? Asked Rank. Delgra turned to the two lions, and said, We've suspected that Black has been up to no good for some time now, but we've never had enough evidence to prove it. Now we do. So let's bring him down, said Rank. Not so fast. There's a problem with that, said Delgra. Chigani raised an eyebrow. He's done everything short of openly admitting he's a traitor. What more do we need to stop him? He asked. A lot, regrettably. While we finally have the evidence we need to prove what we had suspected for some time, it's not enough to convince the government of his attempted treason. To make matters worse, none of this will stand up in court, as they'll consider it all circumstantial evidence. So if we go after him with less than an airtight case, we're sunk. This puzzled the two lions. Why would this not be enough to convince them? Asked Chigani. Because, he's got his fingers too deeply embedded in our government right now. We'd have to disassemble his entire network first before we could effectively bring him down, said Delgra. Alright, so what do we need to do to make that happen? Asked Brakeman. Well, that's the problem. We haven't figured that out yet, said Odivian. Might this help? Asked Brakeman as he held out a small data card of his own. Delgra looked curiously at it. What's this? It contains information I stole from Black's network. It should provide you with everything you're looking for. Delgra took the card and inserted it in his computer. After a minute he nodded. Yeah, this will help me a lot, and should make our job easier. Chigani, give me time to put my network into motion and then we can begin to bring this scumbag down. My family and I are at your disposal. We will help you in any way we can, said Chigani. Delgra nodded. Thank you. Your help will most definitely be needed. Do you know where the Great Stone Pillar of the Ancients is? Chigani nodded. It's just 100 miles from where the others are currently hiding. Good. Be there at 0100 hours in exactly 7 days from now and we'll begin our work. Chigani nodded. We'll be waiting. Black pressed his intercom button and paged his secretary. Yes, sir. Came the reply. Send an Elgar. Right away, sir. Several minutes later Elgar walked into the office. You called? He asked. Black pointed to a folder on his desk. It would seem that Mr. Chigani has decided to side against us. I want you to take this folder to Senator Jocelyn and see to it that he gets the General Secretary to send out the army against the Lions. If they won't join us, then we'll need to dispose of them quickly. Elgar nodded. Right away, sir. Sergeant Welk. Sergeant Sims. Front and center, came a cry across the parade grounds. Two men hurried to the front, snapped to attention and saluted their company commander. Reporting as requested, sir, they shouted in unison. The commander pointed to an officer standing to the side, and said, report to him. He needs to discuss something with you. Yes, sir, said the two men. They then turned and ran over to the officer, stopping briefly in surprise before snapping to attention and saluting. This way, gentlemen, said Delbra. He then led them around the building to a large truck that sat by the roadside. They all climbed inside and closed the door behind them. Delgra set his hat down on a nearby shelf and studied the two men intently. Have a seat. I'm sure you know who I am, he said. The two men nodded. Yes, sir, what can we do for you? Asked Welk. Delgra sighed anxiously. We need you two for a covert mission. You've had a lot of experience with the Lions, and we need that right now. Whatever you need, we'll help you in any way we can, sir, said Welk. Good. What I'm about to tell you is highly classified. So this is to be discussed with nobody except myself and Sergeant Odivian. Understood? Welk and Sims nodded. Crystal clear, sir. Chigani looked out over a field of lions that spread out before him like a great sea of glittering brown and gold. His family was large. Very large. And every one of them looked up to him. He felt an enormous weight resting upon his shoulders as he prepared to address them. It was at this moment that Chigani remembered Meshwa and how he'd appeared to him before the war to prepare him for the coming battles ahead. Yet now he seemed so absent. So silent. Where was he at a time like this? If anything, this would be one of the times when he'd be needed the most. Why am I being abandoned in my greatest time of need, he thought. You are not alone, Chigani. I am always with you, came a soft, loving voice. Meshwa, thought Chigani curiously. The path before you will be hard, but remain strong and do not fear, for it will lead you to your destiny. Chigani thought briefly about this, and then asked, will you help us in defeating Black? My strength is with you always. Go, and be victorious. What about mother and father? Mr. Black wants them dead. Will you protect them? Asked Chigani. They will be protected until the appointed time. Appointed time? What are you talking about? Asked Chigani. Silence. What are they to do? He continued. Silence. It was at that moment that Chigani felt the weight of the world on his shoulders like never before. He looked up towards the stars for several moments as he thought, and then back down at his family. He soon turned to Renk and Pen, and said, Gather all those I have chosen as commanders and meet me on the west end of the valley. We need to begin our work. The two lions nodded, and then hurried off to complete their tasks. Chigani turned back towards the pack of lions below him and thought about each of them. May I do the right thing and make you proud, mother, father, he said quietly to himself. He then trotted off to meet with the others. Brakeman watched anxiously as darkness filled the prairie before him. Where's that guy? He thought. Just then a shadowy lump of prairie grass rose up in front of him. It was Oik. Brakeman frowned at this. How about a little warning next time you sneak up on me like that? Oik grinned. My apologies, my friend, he said. Brakeman waved dismissively. No big deal. It's what you do naturally. Yes, it is. So why did you summon me here? You know where my mother and father are hidden, right? I do. I want you to take them somewhere safe where nobody will find them until this is all over. If what I understand about what's coming is true, then a lot of my family are gonna die before this is over with. So I'd like to ensure that Mom and Dad aren't part of the casualty list. Oik thought for a moment. I have a secret base just north of here. Few know of it. I can hide them there. Brakeman nodded. Thanks. I own you one. If we take down this madman, that will be payment enough for me.